We're live? Dang. All right, Alex, thank you for taking the time to join me here. How do you pronounce your last name? Because I'm going to butcher it here.
Oh, that's all right. Mastrangelo.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of letters. But
So for anybody listening, me and Alex met in Bisbee probably a little over a week ago, and he was doing some maintenance, I think, on a building that he owns down there. But really cool town. And before we kind of get into Bisbee, I'd just like to, talk a little bit about your life. And I saw on your bio online that are you originally from New York City?
originally, yeah,
Okay.
I grew up upstate New York and moved around a lot. So it was my dad worked for IBM.
Oh, wow.
Where they would move you every 3 or 4 years. So I spent a large part of the early part of my life just moving to different communities, and then moved to Tucson at 16, and I've been here ever since.
Okay.
So I've lived in Tucson pretty much my whole adult life.
Okay.
This is what I consider my hometown.
Yeah. And you went to U of A here?
I did.
Okay. And what when you originally started going to school, did you kind of know what you wanted to do, or how was that? Yeah.
I think they say the most common major, the most popular major is undecided. So that's basically what I went in, and I had no clue what I wanted to do, so I just started taking everything.
Mhm.
And what happened was I was actually in a psychology 101 class, these massive classes with hundreds of people in them. And there was one day that they turned it over to the head of the communications department to talk about communications. So this guy gets to class for 45 minutes. And remember, this is a class where there's hundreds of people, and every single class it was a struggle to stay awake. And I'd just literally just be, like falling over, nodding, trying not to spill my coffee. And you look around, and everybody else is doing the same, if they even showed up. This guy walks in, steps up to the podium, and grabs everybody for 45 minutes and doesn't let go. He had everybody's attention in that room. And I thought, I'm like, that's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. If I could learn how to do that, I could do anything. It doesn't matter what I do, I'll do it well. So I think I found out who he was, and I made an appointment with the guy. I went to his office a couple days later and said, look, I was in that class. I was amazed by what you did. I want to join I want to be a communications major. I want to join the major. Tell me what I need to do. And he did. He goes, oh, okay, here, just take these classes, and it wasn't a hard major, but amazing skills, because if you learn that, you can do whatever you want. If you can explain it to people, you can communicate with them, and then the idea of studying how people have communicated over time is really fascinating too. So anyway, that's what I did there, and stayed just long enough to learn enough to be dangerous. So
Yeah. That's great. So you would definitely suggest that for young people today.
I think if you don't know what you're going to do, I think with school, if you know what you're going to do that.
Yeah.
If you don't, and you don't want to spend too long there, the communications is an easy 4-year degree.
Yeah.
It's not really hard to finish in 4. That worked for me, because I got a basis, and then I used it to build my business. Now, had I gone to actually learn business, that probably would have been more helpful, to learn how to run a business, because that I did not know when I got out of school. But I did learn it later.
So what'd you do when you finally graduated and got out?
I think the first thing I did was actually, I worked as a handyman for a couple months.
Okay.
And then pretty quickly went to real estate school, and got a real estate license, and went right into practicing just real estate sales.
And why were you interested in real estate?
I had thought real estate was this very stuffy profession where you have to join this big, corporate thing and become a realtor and do everything they say. And then I met a broker at a local company that had a small company that was very personal and very different. And I felt very at home there. I could be trained directly under a good broker that knew what they were doing. So when I saw that, again, I'm like, hey, can I go to coffee with you? And we talked, and it's like, if I went to real estate school, would you hire me? He said, yeah. I'm like, I'll start tomorrow. So I would do things like that. It's when I see something that works, I do it. If I'm like, this is happening for a reason, I'm just going to do this. So yeah, the thought I put into that was, I might have thought about it for an hour, and it ended up being a career that I've done my whole life. But I did not plan on it. I didn't plan on doing that, and I just went with it, and it stuck.
And so what was the market like at that point in time in Tucson?
It was average.
Yeah.
I would say it was just an average market. And then a few years later it went crazy, and then it crashed. And I started my business in 2007, right before it crashed.
Yeah.
So it was a weird time to start a real estate company, because you're literally, everything was fine, and then you're like, okay, I got my own business now, and this is great, and then it just plummets.
So what were your thoughts at that point when that happened? Were you like, oh my God, I gotta go back to working for some other company and close this down? Or obviously you didn't do that, so.
Yeah, it was a lean company. So the advantage was, when you have a company that's a few months old, was it? Habitation Realty took $4,000 to start.
Wow.
So it was not like a huge amount of money invested. There was no debt. We didn't have any employees. We didn't have, there was really nothing to worry about, other than the fact that we weren't pulling in the kind of money we wanted to. And so instead of closing up, that's when we started doing property management. The property management came about when the real estate crash happened, and there was a big push among real estate agents to go into short sales. And if you ever look at a short sale, and I went and got certified in short sales, I took all the classes to learn about it. And the first thing they tell you is, well, you should talk to an attorney. Always recommend your client talks to an attorney. Now,
Why is that?
Well, because what's going to happen is the attorney, if they talk to the attorney, the attorney's going to tell them, don't do a short sale.
Oh, okay.
But no one ever does it. So they have to tell you, you should tell your client to talk to an attorney. And how many agents did? Not that many. Because when they did, the attorney says, absolutely not. There's all these different things you can do instead of a short sale. They're a terrible idea. My solution to that was, if you don't want to live in this house anymore, you're moving or whatever, and the market's too low, you're upside down, rent it out.
Okay.
And I couldn't refer to anybody, because there were no management companies I thought were any good at the time. There are plenty now. So someone asked me, well, would you manage it? I said, well, yeah, I can manage that. And I did one, and then two, and then,
Awesome. Move from there.
Yeah, just move from there. And it became a model that makes sure your real estate company survives in any housing market.
Yeah.
And right now we're in a good housing market, but we won't be here forever, and we haven't been here forever. Property management actually thrives in a bad housing market. That's when it does really well. And it continues to do well in a good market. It makes it so you can run it like a regular business. Real estate sales are notoriously fickle. You can have a good month and a bad month. The margins on real estate as a broker are very small. You don't get to keep very much. You can have agents that are doing millions and millions and millions of dollars of production. You're getting that much of it. So, and you're taking all the liability. So unless you have 500 agents, 300 agents, okay, even 200 agents, you can do well in that volume. If you're going to run a company with 20 agents, 30 agents, you better have another way to make money. And for us, that's what property management does. That enables us to be a big company. We have great revenue, actually post profits. We can hire full-time people to run it. We have receptionists, nice office, all this stuff we can do because we have a continuous income stream coming in. Because we're doing what nobody wants to do, which is property management.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because when that happened, in 08, a lot of people, if they owned properties that they could no longer afford, and the banks weren't willing to work with them, a lot of people just kind of walked away from their homes or whatever, right? So that's interesting. I've never heard anybody say that, oh, maybe you should have thought about potentially renting that out, as an opportunity.
Think of how short-sighted that is. If you go into it going, oh my God, the market's down, it's like, are you thinking it'll never come back?
Yeah.
And they're not thinking we set up so many people that otherwise have taken a loss on their house or lost their home, we rented it out for them, and then they hung on to it another 5 or 10 years, getting income the whole time, paying down the mortgage, and then the price went up. And then they all sold them. And then we got to do the sales. So it ended up working for everybody. And these are houses that ended up being tremendously profitable that were going to be a loss. And all we had to do was figure out how someone could hold on to them and wait it out.
Yeah.
And once you balance this stuff, once you get income coming in, you kind of forget about it. And if you have somebody dealing with it, you really forget about it. Because then, they're dealing with renting it, fixing it, and all that.
Yeah.
All you do is go, hey, I pay my mortgage again, great. So that's the whole philosophy behind that.
So are you dealing with just home rentals, or is it like multifamily housing, like apartment complexes and stuff like that too?
We do multifamily too.
Oh, okay.
So at first we did a lot of single family.
Hmm.
The market shifted away from that just because single families are too expensive to rent out now.
Okay.
So we do plenty of single family still, but we really got into more multifamily.
Okay.
Because that's where the investors were going more recently.
Yeah. Okay. And you think that's going to continue to grow here? Yeah.
As much as it can. I mean, there's a shortage of housing still.
Yeah.
And the margins have gone down because the value of the real estate went up. A lot more people want to invest in real estate.
Yeah.
So the competition has driven the returns down.
Yeah, that's all they're building in Phoenix basically.
Yeah.
Is luxury apartments. Everywhere luxury apartments. So it's like, but they fill up. So it's like obviously there's a demand for them. So
here we're dealing with existing housing stock, but people are starting to renovate it and make it a little nicer.
Yeah.
But we're dealing with tons of existing stock. They're not doing a lot of new construction. They're doing some, but most of what we deal with is old, and that's why a manager is important, because these aren't new builds.
Yeah.
They break all the time. They keep us busy.
So that's a perfect segue. I'd like to talk about like your love of kind of older and bringing back kind of original whatever aesthetic or style of because a lot of the homes here in Tucson, I don't know that well the areas, but I know there's like historic districts and stuff like that. And so what have you always been into kind of that, like trying to bring back that style and thing like that for people?
As long as I can remember.
Yeah.
So I started collecting antiques when I was 7.
Wow.
And back then nobody wanted stuff, so you could get everything for pretty much free, a few bucks. So I've always liked that. I can't remember a time I did not. So what I do is I look at the houses the same way. I see them for their history, and I've always studied history, and if I'm going to invest in a house, I want to know everything I can about the neighborhood, about who built it, why they built it, who lived there, what's happened to it over the years. The first thing I do when I walk into a house is I deconstruct it in my mind, and I strip away the layers of time and figure out what was behind it.
Yeah.
If it's been changed, why did they change it, and was it a good idea, and should we unchange it? Most of what I do is actually deconstruction. I pull away those layers and take something down to what it originally was, and clean it up, polish it, and take it from there. But I find if you remove all the weirdness that people add to a house, you end up with something that's much more livable. The feedback I get from people, and they don't always know they're doing this, but when they walk into a house that's awkward, it's usually awkward because someone messed it up. Some of them were built awkward, most of them weren't.
Like the flow of it or whatever.
Yeah, it's because this house was 800 square feet, now it's 2,000.
Yeah.
It's not going to flow. It's always going to be weird. But some of these things, sometimes you can help what they've done. If someone added a wall and didn't need to be there, someone took a wall out that should have been there. You find out a little more about why they built the house the way they did, and you can understand the architecture, understand what they were going for. And there are plenty of houses that were built wrong to begin with. And you have a hard time with it, but then the expression of a house having good bones. Did they build something great to begin with, and if so, often what people do is screw them up over time. They don't understand them. They don't take a moment to think, should I do this? They just do it.
So do you find like if or when you've sold a property where you've done that, do people when they come in, are they really like, wow, this stands out because it wasn't just like a normal like flip where they put a bunch of basic crap in here and stuff like that? People really appreciate that? I've
found that they do because it certainly sticks out in their mind. When I sell something like that or rent something like that, which is what I've done more recently.
Okay.
I'm just getting back into selling properties right now because I held them for so long.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing there are people that, yes, the vast majority of people gravitate towards things that look the same. You know, you've got mass market. They're gonna love the gray house with the plank floors and those old numbers they put on the front of all of them.
Huh.
They love that stuff.
That's why they do it, I'm
That's
sure.
why they
right?
do it, because they figure it's, you know, they will get the most people that want it. What I think is, what I like is getting the people that have to have it, because you've created the only thing out there that looks like that. So yeah, not everybody wants it. You only need one, and it helps if you have two, because then they get, you know, they pay more for it. I mean, that's the. But you don't need 100 people wanting one house. You need one person that's like, this is the only house that's going to work for me, and that's what I like to do. I mean, that's what I feel like with people too. It's like that, you know, people are drawn to each other for a reason, because they find each other interesting, and not everybody is a good fit. Houses aren't a good fit for everybody, but when you find that fit, well, nothing else will do.
Do you think people in Tucson, in this city, are more like receptive to that because like this is a more kind of like artsy type place? Do you find that, or no? Do you think it's kind of like anywhere you could do?
I think they're more receptive to it because it's a smaller city.
Yeah.
So you get people here that do want something different, and I think that is, you know, that's why I live here. That's what I love the most about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything like housing? Because I've seen like so much stuff recently. You know, like people are getting into like, you know, like van life, like alternative, like, you know, living lifestyles or whatever. And I've seen different like, you know, ways of building things that people are trying to like experiment with. Is there anything you've seen like where like, oh, that's interesting, where I could see that happening in the future, or maybe that's kind of too early to tell what's going to go on with like new stuff, you know, like in the future?
I mean, I've certainly seen a move towards downsizing houses, even and we don't do a lot of new construction. You know, we deal mainly with existing stock.
Yeah.
I think people, the demand is they want less. They don't want as much space.
Yeah.
They want something that's more sustainable. They want something that's easier to take care of. I like solving problems. I like challenging things. The only, I mean, even in my real estate sales career, I'm always drawn to people that have an incredibly challenging, like they're like, I have this thing I need to do. And no matter what it was, like dealing with, like putting some deal together that seemed impossible and being able to do it. Whether it's buying a house for like a much less money you think you could ever do it for, or finding a needle in a haystack. Those things were always really interesting to me. And I think we will see different housing. I think we will see a move towards, with the cost of materials right now and everything is so expensive, people still want to own the whole thing. They want to own like a piece of something, and it could be a tiny piece of land with a super efficient little house on it that didn't cost much to build, that doesn't use a lot of electricity, that has all the latest, you know, ways to be efficient built into it. The idea of being mobile, of people living anywhere, that's a game changer.
Interesting, right?
Yeah. Oh, working remotely changed everything. Changed it for me.
Yeah.
It's you can work from anywhere you want if you have an internet connection.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And now people are. So what's important? It's like, well, mobility.
Yeah.
So yeah, are people gonna, you know, start living on the road more often? I think young people can live on the road now. It used to be just old people could do that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, yeah, I'm retired, I'm hitting the road.
That's interesting you say that though. It's interesting you said it used to be just retired people where that was a thing. Because that's what I was talking to somebody recently about, how, because when you think of like traveling in, let's say you stop in like some sort of like recreational mobile home area, like you generally think like a bunch of like old people, you know, it's not like super exciting, but I thought that could be like a huge market that's like geared more towards like younger people. So like you stop in these places and they have like whatever, like cool coffee shops or like whatever it is there that attracts. I don't know if that'll happen or whatever, but
well, imagine an RV park catered towards young people. Like you
said.
Yeah. Because you're right, they're not. I mean, like I have a vintage trailer that I go camping in. Like I see these RV parks. I go around and I've been in them.
Yeah.
The majority of them are catered toward an older crowd that have massive RVs that are, and they come in like a spaceship. You know, the legs go out of these things, it levels them, the satellite goes up, and they step out for a minute to hook up the water and the power, and then they step back in that thing and you never see them again.
It's like a condo, like a traveling giant condo.
And at night you see all the TVs going on there. Like, well, you could do that at home. Like, why are you even doing this? But when you see younger people doing it, these are small, these are little trailers, they're little campers, they're little vans. Yeah. They're actually sitting outside. They're enjoying the place they're in. The camper is used for sleeping and for cooking and doing your basics, keeping your stuff in. Visualize a campground that has spots that are half the size. Yeah. You know, so you can fit a lot more of them in there. Yeah. And there's actually, like you said, a coffee shop, something like that. Yeah. And I think that very well could be a different way of doing it. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe it's happening already. Yeah. But how cool would that be?
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
You know, how cool would it be? You could, bring your van somewhere and plug it in, and people won't tell you to move it. You know, it's that would be cool, and I could see that happening.
What do you have as far as I know you restored. It's not an Airstream, right? It's something.
It's an L-Ray, is what they call it. Okay. It looks like an Airstream, but it was just a company that was a very short-lived company that made. Cool. I'm not sure how, maybe 100 of them.
What? Only 100?
Maybe 200. I'm not sure because
God.
I've never found any records on how many they've made. Wow. I've seen maybe 8 of them in my life. So
oh my God.
They're not common.
Where were they made? Do you know?
El Monte, California.
Wow.
Yeah. And they're great trailers. I mean, they're very easy to tow, very efficient. That's what I love about a 50s trailer. They were built to be towed by cars that weren't very powerful. Oh, okay. So they're light and they're aerodynamic.
Oh, that's interesting because when I always look at those, I always thought it was like the opposite because you see the metal, so I'm like, oh, the thing must be like heavy as hell.
Yeah, you can tow it with a car. I tow it with cars.
Really?
Like
wow.
It's super light and slips through the air and maneuvers easily. Yeah. New trailers don't do that. So, because now people have huge trucks, they don't need anything like that. So.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we talk a little bit about Bisbee?
Sure.
Okay, so like I said, I was down there. I don't know. This was like a week or so ago. How did you end up going down there and then deciding to invest in actual real estate in Bisbee? Because I think it's such a cool place, and I'll say it again. I've said this off camera, but it's like you're in almost like on a movie set, or it's just really cool vibe. So
yeah, I started going to Bisbee probably. I think the first time I went there was 20 years ago or something. I mean, it was a long time, maybe actually probably longer than that. It was always, every time I go, I was amazed by it. It's beautiful climate, beautiful architecture, beautiful community. I started getting more serious about it. I always wanted to have a house there. I always wanted to live there. And a few years ago, I got serious about it and did it. I made the move to actually purchase my first house in Bisbee so I could be there and become part of the community down there, which is amazing. It is the most beautiful community. The people that live there are amazing. And the community they built is amazing. Everything, all the beautiful things of a small town where you actually run into people, you talk to people, you connect with people on a real basis are there. And I love that. So that's what got me interested in it. Now I always have to look at something as I'm a business person, I like to find out ways, okay, how can I make a living there? And that was always I think the biggest challenge for anyone that has ever wanted to move to Bisbee or any small town is how do you make a living there? Mm-hmm. And that's what I had to figure out. And what I realized was they did have a need for housing in Bisbee. Mm-hmm.
So was it difficult to find your home that you found there? Did it take you a
while
to
find
no.
Like it was, this was what, 3.5 years ago?
Okay.
They were cheap.
Really?
Yeah, it was super easy.
Really?
I literally went down there, found one, bought it, done. I mean, it was that easy. I looked at, maybe 2 houses. I mean,
really?
it was super easy to do. Yeah. Not the case anymore. They've all gone, and they doubled in price.
In 3 years, only 3 years. That's interesting.
In certain areas, and it's not everywhere, but in certain parts. And I don't consider that really a good thing. It's kind of a shame because it's so expensive now. It's harder for people to buy there, and it's harder for people that actually work in the community to purchase or rent anything there. I was not hoping for that to happen, but I was expecting it to happen, and that's why I was like, well, if this is going to happen anyway, I might as well get something sooner rather than later, so at least I can have it. But that is, unfortunately the case. I think anytime you see something cool, you're like, wow, this is amazing. How come everybody isn't here?
Yeah.
Well, and it's only a matter of time before people start to see that too. And, that happens.
So Bisbee's what, like roughly 5,000 people or so live there?
I think,
Okay.
yeah, 53, 50, it's the population and the elevation are usually the same
Okay.
over there.
Yeah.
They're like 53, 5,400 right in there.
Yeah.
I can't remember, one's a couple hundred more than the other one. I think the elevation might be higher, but it's a fairly small population.
So what do you see like in the next 5 years? Because I know I'd seen when I was down there, you have a building in the old town, downtown, I guess, well, I don't know what you would call it.
Brewery Gulch, so
Okay.
what they consider the entertainment district.
Okay.
The traditional entertainment district.
And what's the story behind that spot?
The
I stayed right behind it. That's where my Airbnb was.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
it
you
was
were
like-
right there. That's,
yeah. Which is
Brewery
great
Gulch, since the beginning of Bisbee in the 1880s, Brewery Gulch is where they had, Brewery Gulch was kind of a progression of things. And it was literally a gulch. It drains water.
Oh wow.
And the first part of Brewery Gulch is usually, like variety stores and things like that. And then it was bars. And really known for its bars. Tons of bars in Brewery Gulch. And then you had the brothels that were behind that.
Really? Wow.
As you went further up the gulch. So and they've always, in the early days of Bisbee, the gulch was a really seedy place. It was rarely photographed. There are very few pictures of the gulch from the heyday because Bisbee didn't really want people. They knew about it, but they didn't photograph it. They didn't advertise it. It was dirty. That's where all of their sin, so to speak, happened. And then Main Street, which is right on the corner, was the respectable part of town. That's where all your businesses were. Your banks, your nicer stores, your merchants, restaurants. That was all on Main Street. Brewery Gulch is where they kept all the bars.
Yeah.
Because people would fight and shoot each other and stuff. They kind of wanted that down there.
That's so crazy.
But I think once, I want to say, I can't remember when prostitution was made legal. It was around 1920 or something like that. It was Brewery Gulch. It was always, they still had all the bars and everything, but it became a little tamer.
Okay.
And so the pictures you find are actually mostly from the 30s and 40s. When they started photographing Brewery Gulch, they paved it. It wasn't so muddy anymore. I think they paved it in the 20s, I believe. But always had definitely a bit of a seedy element to it to this day.
Yeah.
It's where you go if you want to have a drink, if you want to have a good time.
That's why when I was there, when I first pulled up in that parking lot there, the first bar that I saw, there was a bunch of people outside dressed like pirates, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
I don't know I can't remember the name of what that bar was.
St. Elmo's, probably.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which I believe is the oldest continually operating bar in Arizona, or at least they
really holy
so,
shit.
Yeah,
okay.
they've been there a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So the actual building down there that you purchased or are going to be, you're going to have an office in that building, real estate?
That's correct.
Okay. And do you know what that building and what was there before?
It was built in 1900. It's a wood frame building, so it's one of the old West buildings basically. Very traditional, 2-story, all wood, flat front. And it was originally a drugstore, I believe, and became a bar, I think, in the 30s. And it was a bar for the majority of its life, and that was kind of what it's set up to be. And there's apartments upstairs. So the part that was the bar is what I'm converting to my office, but I'm putting the bar back in it.
Oh, okay, nice.
You can actually, the base of the bar is still there. So I'm restoring the bar, and I'm actually going to put an authentic, Western bar in there that it's being restored right now. I already bought it.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's it. Like the inside is going to look just like a bar.
Wow.
Because that's what it was.
Is that going to be can the public come in there or is that just
It'll be private, but
okay, yeah.
If you're nice to
if you're a friend,
client, it's
that's cool. That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's mostly just it's for entertaining. It's not really to make money. It's just to be able to entertain people, have community events there.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to use the space for.
Wow, that's awesome. In the upper floor, are there going to be any apartments? Are you going to convert
They're
it?
already there.
Living space?
So
they're there?
yeah,
Okay.
they were rented. I haven't touched them. So other than add some smoke alarms and stuff like that, they weren't there. But there were there's tenants up there. They're still there.
Cool.
And there's residential.
Yeah.
So and it seems to work really well that way.
Very cool. So we're I know you had said you only continue to see Bisbee is going to grow in the future. Is there anywhere a direction that people would like to see it go as far as if it does grow? Hey, I know like you said, people want things to kind of be how they are now as far as character and things like that. So is there any direction that people are trying to kind of like push it towards, or?
I think people are pushing, you see a lot of friction about everyone wants it to go the way they think it should be.
Yeah.
That happens everywhere, right? And I don't know what will ultimately happen with it. There's, you add too much tourism to a town and you start to take away from the people that live there, which I think is certainly happening. When you get too many people using houses as Airbnbs, then you don't form communities around that because nobody's staying around, and that's not what people do. But you want people to be able to visit. You want hotels and hospitality to be thriving because those tourists are important to keep the economy going. So I think there's a balance. And I hope that balance is achieved, because I would hate to see it become just a tourist destination, because it's so much more than that. And but the tourism is part of it. You can't just say, nobody should visit.
Yeah.
It is essential that tourists go, but I think the essential thing is to respect the community. That whether you're from out of town wanting to buy something down there, or you're going for a weekend, you respect the community. That a lot of people live there, a lot of wonderful people live there, and you're in their space. So
yeah, what was it like during like the height of the pandemic? Was it just totally, completely just dead as far as like?
It was pretty quiet. I mean, I would, because I'm down there about every week, so I go, very, very often.
Yeah.
And it was very quiet. A lot of businesses closed down.
Yeah.
There were a few things still open, but it was definitely quiet.
Mm.
For a community where the bars are so important.
Yeah.
To have the bars closed was terrible.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was awkward. I mean, you're walking around, it's like, wow, I've never seen anyone this sober.
Really?
It was strange. So,
what do we do?
Yeah, what do you do?
Yeah.
So it was once things could open up at some capacity, it helped. When you had you have a few bars open, a few restaurants open, better than nothing. And that's what started happening. Once they started opening up, there's a few places that opened, one place that didn't, but it gradually started coming back.
Did it get hit hard as far as just like restaurants? Are there any that haven't opened up at all? Like they're done?
Some haven't opened.
Yeah.
But a lot of them did.
Yeah.
So there's, I think what I noticed there was the local bank was actually really proactive in making sure the business owners got loans.
Oh, that's cool.
It's the only place I've known where the bank actually called their clients and said, hey, you want one of these PPP loans? I think you need it. And they're like, yeah, let's get it. They made sure everybody had one. At least that's what I'd heard, which is amazing, because it was, when you really need it and everything was really shut down, I think it saved a lot of businesses, but not all of them. There were some that didn't survive.
So whenever I always have kind of like this thought that I'm like, oh, maybe I could at some point in life live in like a town like that size, or maybe a little bit bigger. Do you ever feel like, because I know you go back and forth between Tucson and Bisbee, could you live there full time, or is it does it get after a while you're like, oh my God, I got to go somewhere where there's more action going on, or could you see yourself, maybe it's like retirement, you've been there?
Every time I'm there, I hate leaving, put it that way.
Really, yeah.
So it's, there's a lot to do there, and one thing everyone told me, especially pre-pandemic, was there's so much to do you can't do it all. Every night there'd be multiple things going on.
Yeah.
And since it's been a year and a half since it's been that way, I have to remember what it was. That it was literally every night something would happen, and everybody showed up.
Cool.
The whole community would show up for it. And it wasn't just tourist stuff. It actually was anything but. It was really great community events. So there's a lot to do there. And yeah, I could see living there all the time. Absolutely. I have businesses in both places now, so I go back and forth because I can check on both and be in both places. But I go to Tucson because I have to. I go to Bisbee because I want to.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could live there a lot and not have to be retired.
That's the biggest appeal to me, is like you said, the community aspect, because that's the hardest part about living in a bigger city.
Yeah.
It's more people there are, obviously the less you're going to pay attention to people, and the less you're going to kind of act friendly, because there's just so many people. It's just impossible to do. So it's Did you, when you like first moved down there, was that something that's like from Tucson to Bisbee, was that something that was very noticeable and has been as far as just like connections with people?
Very noticeable.
Really, yeah.
I mean, in Tucson, and Tucson's not a huge city, but it's bigger, you know, and yeah, you can walk into a place in Tucson and not meet a person, not see anybody you know. In Bisbee, it's very different, you know, especially if you're there by yourself. You can walk into a bar in Bisbee by yourself and have a good time. Yeah. You can do that here too, but it's harder. You have to depend more on your ability to just, you know, be that person that'll talk to people and be okay with it versus being in a smaller environment where it's easier to do. But I've always found it easier to be myself down there, and I enjoy that.
I like that. I love that. Okay, so one other thing I want to talk about is the vehicles like you're into. I saw you. I don't know what you were driving when you were down in Bisbee, but it looked awesome. Some '50s like car. I don't know if it was a Chevy
it's a
or
59 Cadillac.
Oh, Cadillac. Okay, yeah, the thing was sick. Yeah. So what are you kind of into, and how'd you get into that?
Been into it also since I was a kid.
Yeah.
So it's funny that the things I like haven't changed that much in my life, but I was into cars from as long as I can remember, and into the historic aspect of it, into the mechanical aspect. I do all my own work on them.
Really? Wow. Okay, that's cool.
My own maintenance, my own restoration work, my own repairs.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, man, that's impressive, actually.
Yes. And most people don't think I do that, which is funny. Like, they're like, "Oh, you actually fix that yourself?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." Like that's because, and I take them places, so you got to know a little about them, or else you get stuck there when they break. So I do the majority of my own work, and that's how I. For me, it's how I get rid of my day. I deal with people all day. And you deal with emotions, and you gotta, you negotiate with people, talk them into things. Cars, you don't do any of that. Yeah. Cars are a mechanical thing. If it's broken, there's a way to fix it, and it doesn't talk back to you. You know, you just gotta know enough about it to be smarter than the car, and that's very relaxing for me to do. That's what I do at night. You know.
Really?
Yeah, when I'm done with the day, 10 p.m. I go into my garage and I work, and that's my relaxation time. It's not work for me.
And is there a specific period of vehicles that you like, or a certain type of vehicles that you like?
I would say the 50s, even through the early 90s, luxury cars. I like cars that I've always felt like they will always make a faster car, they'll always make a more efficient car. They will never make a car that's more luxurious than they made in the past.
Yeah. In
the way they did it. Like, that will never exist again. They're never going to make another 59 Cadillac. They'll always make a faster Corvette. Huh. So, if you've ever compared the two, like getting an old Corvette, getting a new Corvette, the new one will do everything better. Because it's faster, it's more efficient, it's everything. Compare a Cadillac though, and you'll never compare to the ride of a vintage luxury car. They were built to be just as posh as they could be, and even in the malaise era, where they kind of lost their way a bit into the late 70s and 80s, they still had a feel to them that has never been duplicated. Even though they weren't what they were, but they were still really great. Yeah. So I love that stuff, and those are the cars I grew up with. So that's what I'm comfortable in. I want it to be like a living room couch. Yeah. And, I want a giant steering wheel that you take one finger to steer with, and you can just pile it around a road and just blast around and have fun. I always thought that was so cool. Like whenever I see that in somebody's vehicle, whether it's like a truck or older car, like the bench seats, I just think it just seems like so relaxing. I don't know. They are. I mean, new cars are confining. New cars have compartments for everything, which you can. But I mean, try. They're just. I mean, you can't even move. You're completely encased by plastic in a new car. It's like a cocoon or a cockpilot. Yeah, you got a console here, you got an armrest here, you got all kinds of stuff here, and video screens and everything. And really, I just want a car with a nice bench seat and a clear open windshield that wraps around you in glass, and a good view. know, it's a very different experience.
Yeah, that's what I hate about like I'm all for electric cars. I think it's cool, very cool. But that's what I hate about like the Teslas is you get in and it's like one giant screen. It's like that's the last thing I want to look at. Is like another freaking
Just
huge screen. Yeah. It's like I hate like I'm all for it, but just like you said, like make it look like clean and simple and like retro or whatever. So would you ever own an electric car, or you're not into that?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I've never bought a new car in my life.
No shit.
I've never ever like not even close to a new car. Like
How many vehicles do you own?
At least a dozen.
Okay.
And I've had newer cars. You know, they're not all vintage per se, but I don't know. I've never looked at a new car and said I want that. And even it's just I just prefer something else, and that's what I've always done. And since I can fix them, I might as well put that to good use. You know, it's because I can keep anything running basically. And not only that, I love cars with a lot of miles on them. I love cars that have stories on them. I love the history of it. And if I know the story behind the car, that's worth it to me. If someone can tell me, oh, I know from day one who bought this all the way up.
Yeah.
That's the car I want. And I don't care if they put 300,000 miles on it. If they took care of it, that's the car I want.
So you think those cars in those time periods, as long as you can get the parts, you can basically bring it back to life? I mean,
they're designed to be perpetually fixed.
Yeah, that's
New
cool.
cars are not. New cars will last way longer without breaking down than an old car will. But once they're done, they're kind of done. They're designed to be recycled. They're not designed to be reused.
Yeah.
And which is fine. I mean that's okay. You know, the car maker, when they make a car, they don't think about who's going to have this in 50 years. They think about like maybe 5 years. I mean, at most. And it's like, okay, the first owner and the second owner, and then after that, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 10th owner. They're like, by then it's like, you know, the thing's going to be junked or wrecked or something. At one point, they're not going to work anymore.
Yeah.
One of the things that impressed me about cars is the fact that even when they built these back in the day, they didn't anticipate people would save them necessarily.
Really?
Well, the design life of anything is not. They didn't build a car thinking it had a 60-year design life. You know, these are well past any amount of time they're supposed to be around. Yet they're still here, and that kind of amazes me.
Have you ever been to Cuba by any chance?
Not yet. No,
yeah. But I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah.
How they've kept all those going, which is amazing, and they look awesome.
Yeah. Well,
still.
Think about it this way: where in this country, we can keep them going because. It doesn't matter how old the car is. I can get online and I can be like, okay, let me go on eBay. Oh, there's the part I need. There's this I need. We have resources.
Yeah.
And we have the money to pay for it. In Cuba, they kept these going with 0 part support. It's not like General Motors was down there going, oh, let's make sure Cuba is supplied with parts for their 50s cars. They had nothing.
Yeah.
They had no part supply. They had no one was importing to them. They literally had to make things to make these work, and they had no option for a new car. The ingenuity that goes into that is something that I don't think we could ever do here.
Yeah.
And not only that, it's like, you know, I mean, they could turn them into a boat and it's incredible. And it's like, don't keep that person out.
Yeah.
Like, I want to hire that guy.
I know.
You know?
But I think that's what you said, is you don't know how far you can take something until you have to take it. Like if something happened where you were forced to, you know, you have to, you know, do whatever you can to keep it going. And
there's a very famous picture of a bunch of guys in Cuba that took a 1959 Buick and turned into a boat.
That's awesome.
And the amazing thing is, it worked. Like, they made a completely functional boat out of a 59 Buick. Now, they got caught, so they didn't make it because they got caught. But there was nothing wrong with the boat. And literally, had they made it, they would have probably literally drove it into Florida and cruised around. I mean, it was still fully functional.
Yeah.
Incredible.
That's interesting.
And so that's like taking it to a different level. It's like, yeah, anyone could go restore a car, but try turning it into a boat.
Yeah.
And, you know, and doing that. That's a whole level of ingenuity that I have a whole lot of respect for.
Yeah. Awesome. So one other thing I want to ask you about, just because when I was in Bisbee, I was talking to a local, somebody there, and they had suggested that I go down to the border. And I was like, oh, how far is it? Like, I knew we were close, obviously, but like, how far is it? And he's like, oh, it's like, you know, whatever, 15 minutes. So I drove down there.
Yeah.
And like, I just like drive down there, and I didn't realize I could drive right up to the fence, you know? So I literally just like drove, like I could touch the fence basically. And there was, you know, like a border patrol agent that came up, and he's like, what are you doing out here? And I was like,
touching our fence.
yeah, I'm like, I don't know, I was just checking it out. But is there Is there anything interesting as far as just being that close to the border that you see as you know, in the town, or
I
no?
think there are. It's that you get a lot of traffic back and forth, a lot of tourism back and forth.
Oh, okay.
There's definitely a lot of Mexican nationals that come over for the day.
Yeah, to
and,
work.
Or tourists. They hang out in
Tourists.
Bisbee. They go to the restaurants. They shop. They do everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So and there's a lot of people from this side that go down there and do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a very easy border crossing. You can literally just walk right across, and you park your car in the street, and the border's like, you see it right there. You're like, okay, you just walk up and you walk in. It's
Yeah.
that easy. There's no line. You can drive into. I mean, it's easy to do.
Hmm.
So so I think in that, like to go to Mexico for lunch or dinner, you can totally do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of exciting.
That's cool. Yeah, I've never been to Mexico actually.
Oh yeah.
But I was like,
I should have walked over when you were there.
Yeah.
Literally, I could have gone over and.
really?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know because of Corona if it was still kind of like hard to whatever get over the border. No. Do you do that often?
Bring some ID.
Yeah, yeah.
They won't let it's getting over is easy. They won't let you back. I don't go over too much.
Yeah.
But I'll probably start going over more. I know a lot of in Bisbee, there's a lot of businesses over the border that people use frequently.
Okay.
That even like stuff like car painting and sign building and things like that
Cool.
that are over there that I'd like to start using for different projects I'm working on.
Yeah.
So I could see going over there more, but I've only been over there recently, I think just once. I mean, I've been on the border many times, but that particular crossing.
Yeah.
And everything was still shut down at that time. It was a
Yeah.
while ago, so it was pretty quiet. But yeah, I'll be going back soon.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you, Alex, very much. Is there anything for people going down to Bisbee? Is there anything that you really suggest? Like people go like check this out or do this or whatever. Obviously, the whole town is like basically like it's just cool to walk around and look at because there's so much like artwork. So
I would say, don't go. Stay the night. If you go there, stay the night.
Yeah.
Stay the weekend. Do stuff while you're down there. Walk around. I think one of the worst things I see in Bisbee are the people that just drive up the street going 3 miles an hour and don't get out of their car.
oh my god.
If you don't get out of your car, you're missing the whole thing, and you're certainly not supporting the town. Get out of your car. Walk around. Pop in places. Check it out. Shop. Eat. Drink. Have some fun. That's why that stuff is there. There's a lot to do. So I think so many people miss the point. They literally just drive through and go home. Or they stop at one place. Or they'll do like one little thing and they don't really experience what it is. Get immersed in it. Be there and be respectful of it. That's the point I try to get across to anyone that visits. It's be respectful but enjoy it.
Yeah.
And have a good time and stay a little bit.
Cool. I think that's a perfect way to end it. Thank you very much, Alex. Seriously, thank you.
Absolutely.
It was so awesome meeting you, and I'm glad this happened. So,
Yeah, me too.
all right. Adios.